Hey guys, this is Dave from Forest Jungle Collective. Behind me you can see the Alhambra and Granada, and this is my first attempt at a travel blog.
So you may or may not be aware that there was an Islamic kingdom that ruled in Spain from the 700s all the way up till 1492, just a few months before Columbus departed. So while us Brits were pretty much building everything out of straw and dirt, the Moors were constructing some of the most spectacular wonders you'll see anywhere in Spain, probably anywhere in Europe. We planned a quick trip to fit them all in, flying to Seville, heading on to Cordoba and finishing up flying back from Granada. We were taking this trip in December, and I'd honestly prepared myself that it might just be rainy all day, every day, but hey, we might see some nice things and it couldn't be too bad. But instead, wow, we barely saw a single cloud in the sky the whole 6 days we were out there. It was just beautiful, a couple of degrees below t-shirt weather in the mornings, but still glorious sunshine. So yeah, I really have to recommend, go in December. We paid about £30 to fly into Seville and only about 19 quid to return from Granada. Okay, so Seville. Seville was a great surprise. With the river and the bridges, it had quite a Parisian feel that I hadn't really anticipated, and we caught a couple of really stunning sunsets there. We stayed in the centre. To get the charm of Seville, I'd really recommend staying within about a square mile of the cathedral. We mainly just wandered around the first half day after our flight just to get the layout of the place, and even without an itinerary, there is more than enough to see and keep yourself occupied. Even just getting yourself lost in the streets is exciting. Then on day 2, we pretty much hit everything all at once. First the cathedral and the Giralda, that's the minaret which was repurposed as a bell tower. Apart from the incredible views that this offers, it's not too bad just to climb, as there's no stairs, just floors and floors of ascending ramps. Apparently it was built such that if you didn't fancy walking to the top, you could just ride your horse up the way up every morning, which is hilariously lazy if true. So the cathedral itself is spectacular. It's supposed to be the second or possibly third largest cathedral in the world, depending on whether you're measuring footprint or cubic volume. Oh, and Columbus is buried there in this subtle and understated little memorial. Yeah. Anyway, next up, and also next door, we headed into the Alcazar. Much as that sounds very exotic, and it really is, Alcazar just means castle, so in case you get confused. The Alcazar is ridiculous. We took a left on the way in, and then took a right, which means we didn't stumble across the most impressive part till last, and adjectives just fail. The interiors are insane. Just look at it. We'll talk about this more later, but even though this place isn't much of a secret anymore, because Game of Thrones did some filming there in the gardens and around, it is somewhat underrated and underhyped as far as the sites in Andalusia go, so make going there a priority. So next, after a late lunch, we went a bit further south to the Plaza de España, or as Jen referred to it, Disneyland. It's pretty spectacular, and of course it's free just to come and hang out. Oh, and my suspicion was confirmed later, Star Wars Episode 2 filming location. Just a little bit. And then we were in a bit of a hurry because sunset was rapidly coming on. We made it to the Torre del Oro, or Golden Tower, and very literally ran up the stairs to catch the sunset. That was another plus to December actually. The sun sets just a few minutes after 6 p.m, which meant there's a lot of sites which were still open. So if there's somewhere you can climb up, you're going to get some really spectacular sunsets over the city. If we'd been staying in Seville any longer, there's a lot more sites we could have visited, but just as a short glimpse, I feel like we got a pretty good cross-section. The next morning, before our train, we just had time to hit the Italica. It's a Roman amphitheatre just a little way northwest of Seville, just outside a small town called Santiponce, which apparently is where Hadrian and Trajan were born. So, cool, yeah. This was definitely worth the early start. The busloads of school kids were piling in by 10 a.m, so I was really very glad when we got the first tranquil hour when the gates opened at 9 a.m. And they shot some of Game of Thrones there too. I have a feeling that's going to become a theme with lots of these. Pretty much any location that is even slightly archaic or mysterious has probably been a filming location for Game of Thrones. I'm pretty sure there's a mysterious looking bush down the side of my flat that was used as a Game of Thrones location. There's a high-speed rail line between Seville and Cordoba, which brings us to Cordoba. So Cordoba was a Roman city that became the capital of the Moorish kingdom of Al-Andalus. It's famous for two things particularly, the iconic Roman bridge and the Mezquita, which is the cathedral/mosque mash-up just across the bridge, famous for its forest of horseshoe arch columns in their iconic red and white. We only had 24 hours to do everything. Entirely literally, the train got in at 3 p.m. Wednesday and the bus was leaving at 3:30 p.m. Thursday, so we had to get a move on. Quick march through the centre of Cordoba, and these streets are confusing, beautiful, mysterious, and full of charm, but they often go on for a long time towards one dead end with no branching path to escape, so be prepared to double back on yourself if you're not paying attention. We're kind of quite big Airbnb enthusiasts, and I was massively impressed with this one. It was one of the cheaper ones we could find, but it was nestled in a traditional courtyard type property layout. It was actually a roof apartment in deep, warm, walnutty wood tones. Yeah, it was lovely. So after quickly dropping our bags and getting keys, we headed to the river to see the famous sights for ourselves, and yeah, no incredible shock, but yes, it was exactly as beautiful as it looked.
Unfortunately, the tranquility of it was being shattered by some genius with an accordion who was kind enough to amplify himself so you just couldn't get away from it anywhere on the bridge.
But tasteless buskers aside, it was very special. Next, we took a wander around the outside of the cathedral. There's a tourist info spot just there, and I'm really glad we dropped in when we did, because we wanted to see the Medina Azahara, and it turns out you can only book the bus for that at least a day in advance. More on that in a bit. So long story short, we managed to time our climbing at the bell tower with sunset, and once again, some really spectacular sunset shots. You've got to be kind of sneaky. As far as we were told, you can't book the bell tower in advance. There's a group of 20 that goes up every half hour, and when you get up there you'll see why, because it's so small, there's not really space for anyone else. And you've got to sort of hang out round about the base until the appointed time, otherwise you might not get into the elect group. So that was really special. We then took a wander through the Cordoba streets just as it got dark, which was lovely, caught the colours of dusk at the river and had dinner. By the way, we always try and eat quite inexpensively on our trips, so yeah, if you want food tips, you'll need a food blogger who earns a lot more than we do. Okay, next day, this was really busy. So admission to the cathedral interior itself is normally €10 each, but between 8:30 and 9:30 AM, it's free. Now, this is not widely publicised, it's on the signage, but it's easy to miss. Now, again, we thought we were being quite sneaky, getting, our early kind of morning sneak on again. But it seems this might not be a particularly well-kept secret. There was this whole crowd gathered. So I can't say this early slot is particularly serene, but the good news is that all the stuff you want to see is above you, so the selfie takers don't need to spoil your view. And yeah, it was pretty incredible. You can kind of lose yourself in the mesmeric effect of the columns that seem to stretch on into infinity. But yeah, thanks to the Reconquista, the middle section has been hijacked into this Catholic cathedral, so that kind of makes the mood a bit odd. We were quite tight for time though, so as mentioned before, we had a bus to catch to the Medina Azahara. These are some ruins to the northwest of Cordoba. It's the ruins of a new model capital that a guy with the unassuming name of Abdul al-Rahman III built from scratch, just a few miles outside Cordoba. It got wrecked in a civil war only about 70 years after it was started, which kind of sucks because it was pretty spectacular in its day. The spectacle of different things we saw on holiday made these ruins seem a little less impressive, which is perhaps unfair because it was still a pretty great sight. So next we jumped on a bus to Granada. The bus trip was actually really enjoyable. It was a patchwork of whitewashed towns perched on hilltops and so many olive trees. I'm not exaggerating, we got stuck between 19 different tractors during the 2.5 hour journey, each one of them dragging a trailer full of olives behind it. So, Granada. By the time we'd got in and walked from the bus station, we were kind of bushed, so nothing exciting that evening, which just left the one day to do everything. But let's hit pause and talk about the Alhambra a second. So of all the Islamic architecture in Andalusia, the Alhambra is probably the most famous, the most talked about, photographed, and also the greatest source of aggro and disappointment. Such is its renown that it is booked up a lot further in advance than you'd expect. So to recap, this is December we're talking about, and I thought this was about as off-peak as you could get. So we'd heard about booking ahead, and accordingly, just before our flight out, about 6 days before, we went to book, and I'm sure you can see where this is going. All booked, all red, no tickets on any of the 3 days we were in Granada. Now, we were lucky. They have an evening slot, which in winter is 8 PM till 9:30 PM. So we got lucky, but it was a close call. Anyway, Granada. So first thing, we headed up the hill with the Palacio del Alhambra, which has some incredible views over the city. If you head a little further, you'll find a rather assuming St. Nicholas Church, but it's not the church you're there for. You now have the spot that everyone stands to take the picture of the Alhambra with the Sierra Nevada mountains in the background. We went to the cathedral next. Now, while Granada Cathedral is undoubtedly amazing, we didn't really feel the need to stick around too long. I mean, bear in mind, this for us was cathedral number 3 in about as many days. So, Our next destination was up the hill to see the Alhambra exterior. Again, follow your nose or your phone, it's not hard, you'll find it. And then from there you can head into the Palace of Charles V, and that's, well, it's kind of nice. There's a short and free museum you can wander through. So, having scoped out the Alhambra from the exterior, we got a spot of lunch and headed for the Abbey del Sacramonte. And then, yeah, after a couple more detours, it was eventually evening time and time for us to actually see the Alhambra. Now, to be honest, I was wondering if it was going to be worth all the hype, and I mean, a spot that seems to be suffering from over-tourism as much as this, I was kind of gearing myself up to be a bit underwhelmed. Gotta say though, the Nasrid palaces live up to their reputation. The ornate textures covering every wall and ceiling in such incredible detail. It was kind of a mind-blowing experience. I almost wish I could tell you that all the over-tourism is stupid and that the Seville Alcazar is better, but no, this was a real highlight of the trip.
And with that, we're basically done. I hope you enjoyed this. I quickly realised I had to skim down the details in these videos, otherwise you can barely keep it below an hour, but I know how much I appreciated the info that other travellers posted about locations, bus times and all the practical things like that. So if you're thinking of visiting Andalusia and you've got any questions, please drop them in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer if I can. The music you've been hearing in the background is part of an EP that we've just released. If you go to bandcamp.com, you can find it there. There's a link below. Best way you could support the channel is to go there and give that a listen and maybe a purchase if you enjoy it and you want to help us make more of these. Otherwise, we're a new channel, so believe me, every subscriber at this point makes a huge difference, and there's going to be more very, very soon. We've been pretty busy the last 6 months and we've got a lot to show you. So check back and we'll catch you soon. All the best.